Happy New Year to you. Tomorrow is going to be 2023. Yay! I hope that the next year is filled with joy and wonderful things for you. And today I'm going to show you how to make this wonderful little bracelet. This is really cute. It turned out really cute. I love the color scheming that I chose. Of course, you can do this in any colors that you would like. It would look beautiful in pinks, purples, whatever. I made mine in a white opal. I do have all of these beads on my website, so if you would like to get some, they are there and available for you. However, they're very common size and types of beads, so you should be able to do this just by digging in your stash. You could also use a 4mm bicone for this pattern. You do not have to use a 4mm round like I have. Let me get real close and show you the units. I just think this just turned out really, really, really cute. And this is a little bit more advanced of a stitch simply because of the way that the beads lie in the pattern as you're doing it. It's a little bit more difficult to get through because of the angles. So if this is your very first bead weaving project, you may want to consider something else first to get a little bit of practice and get used to how bead weaving works before you do this one. Otherwise, it is pretty simple and straightforward to do. Let me put this on so you can see. And if you want to try it for your first one, of course you can, but just giving you a little heads up. And this is what it looks like on the wrist. Really pretty. So let's go ahead and look at what it takes to make this particular project and get started. Okay, for this project today, we're going to use a variety of seed beads. Mine are all Toho, and we will be using an 11-0 in two colors. So I've got frosted sugar plum and I've got galvanized permanent finish aluminum. Then we'll be using a 15-0. The 15-0 I'm going to be using in galvanized permanent finish aluminum also. And then you will need some 8-0 seed beads, and this is also the frosted sugar plum. Then you're going to need some 4mm round crystals. So you could use anything that's 4mm round. It doesn't necessarily have to be a crystal. But this is a white opal, 4mm round. And then we're going to be using some small thread. So this is a 6-pound Fireline, and I'm going to use it. You can also use a 10 or 8-pound nanofill. You want a very small diameter thread because you're going to need to go through these beads quite a bit, plus you're using 15-0 seed beads. You'll also need a size 12 beading needle. I don't recommend a beading needle any bigger than that because for the same reason, you need to pass through these beads, and we're using 15-0s also. So size 12, some 6-pound Fireline or 8 or 10-pound nanofill, and then you'll need a clasp. I'm just using a little plain toggle clasp here. So you can use whatever clasping you would like. You need to put onto your needle at least a wingspan of thread. A wingspan is when you spread your arms out to your sides like you're going to fly away. You measure from the fingertips of your first arm, the length of that arm across your chest, the length of your second arm to your fingertips on that arm. That is a wingspan. You will need to extend your Fireline or nanofill during this project more than likely. So I will post a video that will show you how to do that in the description box beneath the video player, just in case you do not know how. So let's go ahead and get started with this project. Okay, to start this project, you will pick up a 4mm round, and then a 15-0 seed bead, and then an 8-0 seed bead, a 15-0 seed bead, a 4mm round, and then 3 11-0s, and I'm using my main color, which is my sugar plum, because we have two colors of 11-0s here. Now, this is what you should have on your needle, just like this: 4mm round, 15-0, 8-0, 15-0, 4mm round, and 3 11-0s. Now we're going to bring this to the end of the thread. Let me get out here a little, and we're going to bring this to the end of the thread. And then we're going to go up from the tail side through all of these beads. You do not have to leave a long tail, just enough to hold on to and enough to tie a knot. So just travel from the tail side all the way up all of these beads. Hold on to the tail, hold on to the beads, push your needle through. Then, when you have something that looks like this, pull on your tail and your working thread and draw them together like that. Now we're going to take our tail and our working thread, and we're just going to tie a surgeon's knot. So just go through that loop twice and pull this down. And this is what you should have. Let's get a little closer. That's what that should look like. Now, we're going to trim this little tail just a little bit, just to get it out of the way. I'm leaving some out in case it slips. And then I'm coming out between the two beads here where my knot is. So I'm going to go up into these 3 11-ohs. I'm going to sew all the way around until I come back out of this bead where my tail is. So we'll go through these 3, and then I'll go through this one and the 15-oh. Then I'll go through the 8-oh. And then I'll go through the 15-oh and the 4mm round right here. And this is what I have. I'm just going to move that little tail out of the way a little bit, and we're going to start working the flower pattern. We're going to be building the border and the flower at the same time. We need to be coming out of the outside of the 4mm rounds in order to do this. Each time you put on a stitch, you'll be coming out of the 4mm round towards the outside of the unit. You're going to start with your border beads, which will be the 3 11-ohs in your main color. So I'm picking up 3 11-ohs in my sugar plum color. Then I'm going to pick up my petal, which is my 4mm round, and then I'm going to pick up a 15-oh seed bead, just like this. And I'm going to go just into this 8-oh. So I'm just skipping over that 15-oh, going into the center 8-oh, and I'm going to pull these beads down, just like this. Now we're going to work one half, and then we're going to work the other half. So once you go through your 8-oh, you'll always go into the previous bead on the other side. So now I will go through the 15-oh and the 4mm round on the opposite side from which I just placed my bead. And I'll come through that. Now I am on the outside of the 4mm round. I can build my border and my next petal. So I pick up my border beads, which are 3 11-ohs, and then I'll pick up my petal, which is my 4mm round, and then my center, which is my 15-oh. I'm going to skip all this stuff and go directly into that 8-oh. Now you can also go into the 15-oh on the other side just to make it easier, because you always have to travel through the beads on the previous side, or on the opposite side, the previous beads. So travel through that 15-oh. Things may loosen up. That's okay. We'll just pull them back down when we get this through. I'm just going to pull this all tight, just like that. The first unit is a little weird because it's just hard to hold on to. So then, now we're coming out of this 15-oh, we're going to go into the 4mm round. Pull your thread through, tighten it up, and this is what you should have. Now, again, we need to build our border, our petal, and our center. So we're going to pick up 3 11-oh seed beads for the border, and then we're going to pick up a 4mm round for the petal and a 15-oh for the center, just like this. Now we're going to go through this 8-oh and the beads on the other side. So if you can go through the 15-0 and the 4mm round, that's great, go through it. Otherwise, do them separately, one at a time, and pull these down. Tighten them up by giving it a little tug. I push on it a little bit between my thumb and my finger and flatten out the beads and put everything into order. Now we're coming out of this bead on this side. We have our 3 petal beads on this side. We need to make our last one on this side. There will always be 6 petals, 3 on each side. So we're coming out of the outside. We pick up our border beads, 3 11-0s. Then we pick up our petal bead and our center bead, the 15-0. Now this one, we will have to travel, of course, to the bead on the opposite side, just like we have been doing. However, it's at an angle to where you cannot get through the 15-0. So just go through the center of the 8-0. Go up towards the top of the 8-0, avoiding all the 15-0s on the other side, and pull your thread through. Lay these beads out and then just gently pull your thread over in the 8-0 towards the beads here that we now need to go through, because we'll always go through the beads on the opposite side. So now we're going to go through this 15-0 here, and it's at a funny angle, so just get through it the best you can and come up through that 4mm round also. Pull your thread through. Tighten everything up with a tug, pushing your beads into line with your thumb and your finger together like this. And now we have our entire flower. However, we do not have our last border. So we need to place our border and then sew through these 2 beads, up through the 8-0 and down through these 2. So we're going to pick up our 3 11-0s for the border, and we're going to go down into this 4mm round and this 15-0. It's easy to get those together, so just go through those 2. Then into the 8-0, and again, just go towards the top of the 8-0, push everything out of your way, and just go through the center of the 8-0. Pull your thread through, and then just kind of pull your thread over to the next side here. We are now going to go through this 15-0 here and the 4mm round. We now have our flower. We are going to finish the border now by placing a bead in between each of these gaps. We'll place a smaller bead, we'll place a 15-0, and that will reduce the diameter of it and pull it under the beads like a base. So what we need to do is go into these 3 11-0s here, coming out of the 4mm round, go into the 3 11-0s, put your thumb and finger over it, give it a tug, and make sure there's no slack. Pick up a 15-0 seed bead and go into the next set of 3 11-0s right here. Pull this down, give a little tug. They won't start to draw under until we get several of them in. So now pick up a 15-0 and go into the next set of 3 11-0s. And continue. Pick up a 15-0, go into the next set of 3 11-0s. And now you can see, as I do this, it's starting to pull my beads under, and you can even feel them just suddenly tighten up and go under the flower. Then I'm going to move that little tail. I'm going to pick up another 15-0, and I'm going to go into the next set of 3 11-0s. Pull this down and continue. 15-0 and into the next set of 3 11-0s. And as I do this, I can feel the 11-0s drawing under the flower. And now I'm in my last set. I'm going to go ahead and go through the 3 11-0s here. Pull this down, and now it will completely draw and make a border around the flower. like this. However, there's not enough tension, so we're going to sew around all these beads again. We're going to include the 15 O's as we sew through the 11 O's. So I'm coming out of these 11 O's, I'm going to go into this next 15 O and all the way through like this. It doesn't matter how many you pick up. It's better if you end at the 15 O's though, just so that you can get through them better. So now I'm going through the 11 O's where I left off and through the next 15 O. Silk guide doesn't want to stay in my hand. And then I'm going to go through these 3 and the 15 O. I'm going to sew all the way around until I get to this set here, which when I hold it sideways like this, my 8/0 seed bead will be horizontal. That way we can put on our clasping on this side and know that all of our beads are going to, or all of our flowers are going to basically lay the same way with the center bead horizontal. So I'm going to sew up into this 11 O or 15 O, 3 11 O's, pull tight. Now they're drawn together pretty well. I'm going to go into this 15 O, these 3 11 O's, and exit this last 11 O, ignoring the 15 O, and pull this through. And this is what you should have, just like this. Now, let me back off just a little bit. It's kind of obnoxious. And we're going to put on our clasping on this end, then we'll work back down to this end and make our next unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up 3 11 O seed beads, and this time I'm going to use my silver seed beads. So the other color of seed beads you picked out, no matter what they are, pick up 3 of them, pick up an 8/0. I'm going to set this down and drop these beads to my piece. So I have 3 11 O's and an 8/0. Then I'm going to go through my clasping and just drop it down. Now, I need to just come through this 8/0 seed bead, ignoring the 3 11 O's. So I'm just going to go through this 8/0. I'm going to pick it up, hold it between my fingers, and I'm just going to pull my thread through and draw that clasping down to the 8/0, just like this. Now we need to create the other side to connect over here. So we need to pick up 3 more 11 O seed beads, like this, and we're going to go into the opposite side. So just ignore that little 15 O and go back up through these 3 11 O's that we're attaching to, just like this. Now we're going to sew back through this a couple of times. I'll do it once with you and then we'll do it a couple times off camera. So we're going to reinforce our clasping by going up through the 3 11 O's next to where our thread is coming out of these 3 11 O's, go up into the 8/0 and then into the clasp. I hold onto it with my thumb and finger just so that I don't distort anything, and then I give a little tug. Go back into the 8/0 and then down through the 3 11 O's on this side. Pull it through. And now we are going to go back through the 3 11 O's we're attached to. Do that 2 more times and we'll be back. Okay, so I've sewn through 2 more times. Now if you're having difficulty getting through your beads with all the thread that we're going through, then your thread is too big. That's why you need a very small thread for this one. And a small beading needle. So if you're having difficulty, that's probably your issue. Now I'm just going to go down here and clip this little tail. I don't want to burn it down because I don't want to blob in my beads. I need to travel back through these. So I'm just going to clip that down some more. And now we need to sew through the border beads down to the bottom of the flower so that we can make an extension and our next unit. So what you're going to do is you're coming out of these 3 11 O's, go into this 15 O and the next 3 11 O's. And I'm sorry, I'll be able to hold on to it better once it's a little bit bigger. I apologize. Then through the 15 O, the next 3 11 O's. And then I'm just going to go through the 15-0 and these 3 11-0s here and not through this 15-0. Just through the 11-0s here and exit. Now we're going to make a little extension because these units are kind of stiff. Without an extension in between, it will be difficult for the bracelet to have nice movement. It'll just be really stiff. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up one of our 11-0s in our other color and then 3 11-0s in our main color and then another 11-0 in the other color like this. And we're going to go down into these 3 11-0s on the opposite side. So we're coming out of these 3 11-0s. We're going to go back into them, ignoring the 15-0s on either side. Pull these beads down. And you get a little loop like this. We're going to sew back through it just to make sure that it's secure because it is an extension between units. So when we do this, we're just going to go through the 11-0 on its own to retain a certain shape that we want here, and then we're going to go through all 3 of the sugar plum 11-0s here, and then we're going to go through this 11-0 here. I'm going to put this together and pull it and then go through these that we're attaching to again. So we're just sewing around all of them. I just like to sew through the individual 11-0 on either side and then the 3 here so that it helps kind of retain the shape I need for my next unit. Now I'm coming out of these 3 11-0s here. I'm going to go up through this single 11-0 again on its own, pull my beads or pull my thread through, and then go through these 3. And now that we're coming through these 3, we are ready to make our next flower. So we will start with the 2 top petal beads just like we did before. So we're going to pick up a 4mm round and then a 15-0 and then an 8-0 and then a 15-0 and then a 4mm round, and I'll show you what I have here. Just like this. Now we're coming out of this side of these 3 11-0s. We need to go into the opposite side of the 3 11-0s and through all 3 of them. Pull your needle through. If it twists, just untwist it and pull it down so that it looks like this. Now we need to sew through these again just because it is crystal and you want to make sure that everything is nice and strong and secure. So go through the 4mm round and the 15-0, excuse me. Pull your thread through and then go through the 8-0. If they get messed up, it's okay. I've tried to do it neatly and it just doesn't happen. They just get messed up until I go all the way back around. Then up through the 15-0 and the 4mm round. So basically we've just sewn through all of these beads. We're going to come through the 11-0s. Now, because we need to be coming out of a 4mm round on the outside to make our units, we need to sew through again to this bead. So the first sew through was for security. The second sew through is for positioning. So we're going to go through this 4mm round, 15-0, 8-0, 15-0, and 4mm round. And now we're ready to start our flower. So we need to pick up our border beads first. So we will pick up 3 11-0 seed beads. Then we'll pick up a petal, which is the 4mm round, and a center bead, which is a 15-0. Then we're just going to go directly through the 8-0. Ignore the 15-0s on either side. Go through just the 8-0 like this. But you could go through the 15-0 on the other side if you want, but that's up to you. pull this down like this, and now that we've built this side, we need to go through the previous bead on the opposite side to build our next petal. So now we have to go up through this 15-0 and this 4mm round. Pull your thread through, make sure everything's tight and neat, and now let's build our border, 3 11-0s, a 4mm round, and a 15-0, just like this. Now we're going to go directly into the 8-0. You can, because we need to sew up through the beads on the opposite side, you can go ahead and grab the 15-0 if you can. Sometimes all that does is just push your beads out of place, but if you can go through it, go through it. And then just pull everything back into alignment like this, and then come up through this 4mm round. So once you build a bead on one side, you have to go through the bead on the previous side to be in position to build your next petal. So pick up your border beads now that we're coming out of this 4mm round, 3 11-0s, and then pick up your petal bead, which is your 4mm round, your center bead, which is your 15-0. Now we're going to go directly into this 8-0, and I'm not going to worry about capturing the 15-0s. I am just going to go through it, because now they're at an angle where it's very difficult to pick them up. Pull this down. You have your third petal on this side. Now we have to go through the beads on this side in order to make our next one. So go up through the 15-0 and the 4mm round. Pull your thread through, straighten everything up, and then pick up 3 border beads, so your 3 11-0s, and then your petal, which is your 4mm round, and then a 15-0. And we're going to go into this 8-0. At this point, it's much easier if you go through the 8-0 in the center. Let me get you close, towards the top of the bead. So I'm going to position my needle right in the center of this 8-0. I can push these beads down on this side, and then I can go directly through, just like this. After I have them through, I'll just position it down and then pull my thread towards the bottom of the 8-0 so that it's in position again. Because now that we've placed all of our petal beads, we need to come through the opposite beads on the opposite side again, and then we'll build our border. So anytime you put a petal bead down, you then have to cross over and go into the beads on the opposite side, including after you've done your last bead. So now we're going to go into this 15-0 and this 4mm round right here. So I'm coming out of the 8-0. Pull this down. Straighten your beads up. And now we have to make our border. So we're going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads, and we're coming out of this bead. We need to go down into this bead, the 15-0, the 8-0, and then we'll travel back up through these. That way we will then have created our border and connected these 2 leaf beads. So now we're going to go into this 8-0 and the 15-0, just like this. Put your thumb and your finger over it, pull these down. Now go into the 8-0, and again go through the center of the 8-0. It's just easier. You can push your beads down, come through, and then just pull your thread towards the bottom of the 8-0. Then go through this 15-0 and this 4mm round. Okay, let me get that 15-0 back up here. There we go. Don't try to hurry with these, just relax, take your time, because it's a little bit more intricate sewing, but it's a simple process. It's just that things are at a funny angle, so you just have to take your time. We're coming out of this 4mm round here. We're going to go into these 3 11-0s here. me back off just a little bit now. And we're going to begin to put our 15 O's between the border beads again and pull our border around our flower. So 15 O, coming out of these 3 11 O's, I'm going to go into these 3 here. Pull that down, pick up a 15 O, go into the next 3 11 O's, and pull this down. Then another 15 O, and just continue all the way around. After you get this far, it'll start to, if you're giving a nice little tug, it'll start to pull the beads in the border down under the flower a little bit. And then we'll go into the next 3 here. And just continue. And you can see I'm giving a nice tug and making sure that my beads in the flower kind of pop up above those 11 O's. And then I'm going to put in my last 15 O and go through these 3 11 O's here. Pull it tight, arrange the flower, and then sew through all of the border again. If you do not sew through it again, you won't have a real nice tight border and your flower will not stay puffed up on top the way it should. So I'm going to go through all the 15 O's and all the 11 O's again. And as I go through each section, I will pull and tighten my thread. And I'm just continuing till I get all the way down to those bottom 11 O's where we can make our next extension and our next unit. So now I'll go through these 3 here. And then into this 15 O and these 3 11 O's. After I get all done, I just kind of arrange my flower, puff it up, give a nice little tug, clean everything up, and now I'm ready for my next unit. So what I need to do is make my little extension in between. So we'll go ahead and make one more, and then we'll go to length off camera. So we're going to pick up an 11 O seed bead in our accent color. So I've got my silver. Then we're going to pick up our main color, 3 11 O's, and then an 11 O in the accent color, just like this. And we're going to go into the opposite side of the 3 11 O's we're coming out of, avoiding the 15 O's that are on either side of them. Pull this down into a loop. Now we're going to sew around it. We're going to sew through the side beads, the accent color, by themselves. Pull through, and then go through all 3 of your main color beads, and then go through your accent color bead, back up through the 3 that we've connected to, and then down through this 11 O on its own on this side, and then through the 3 here, and we're ready to start our next unit. Now we've established position and we've secured our extension. So we will begin a flower, and we're going to pick up a petal bead, which is a 4 millimeter round, and then we're going to pick up a 15 O, we're going to pick up an 8 O, a 15 O, and a 4 millimeter round, just like this. Now we're going to go into the opposite side of the 3 11 O's we're coming out of and go through it, just like that. Now we're going to secure this by sewing all the way around it and then halfway back through, well, about 3/4 of the way back through to position our thread. So the first time around is a securing stitch to make sure that you have 2 layers of thread through the crystals here so that it doesn't break. Now I'm going back into my 3 11-ohs. So I've gone all the way around now securing. Now I need to come all the way to this bead so that I'm in position to build my border and my next petal. You always have to be coming out of the outside of a 4mm round to make a petal. So we're going to go through these beads again and then up through this 4mm round. And now we can begin our next flower. Let's make sure everything's in line here and looks halfway decent. Now I'm going to pick up 3 of my main color 11-ohs for my border. We back off just a little. Got the 3 11-ohs here. Then I'm going to pick up my 4mm round and my 15-oh for the center. And then I'm just going to travel through this 8-oh seed bead. And I can also go through the 15-oh on the other side here. Then I need to travel up through this 4mm round, because once you place a petal bead, you have to go through the previous petal bead on the other side every time. Then we're going to pick up the border beads, a 4mm round, and a 15-oh. And again, we're going to go into this 8-oh, and these center petals, you can always travel through the 15-oh and the bead on the other side at the same time, because they're not at a funny angle. The top ones and the bottom ones, they're at a funny angle. So once you get that in there, pull it all together, make sure everything's nice and neat, and now we're going to make our next petal. So we are going to pick up 3 of our border beads, 3 11-ohs, come here 11-oh, and then we're going to pick up a 4mm round, a 15-oh, and go through the 8-oh. And again, once you have this many beads, you want to go through the center of the 8-oh towards the top of it and pull these down. Just like that. Make sure everything is tight, there's no slack, and now we will build the next one. And I'll get a little closer just to make sure, since this is our last one, that you can see exactly what's going on. We've come through this 8-oh, we have to go through the beads on the opposite side, the previous beads from the one we just built. So we just built that one, we come through the 8-oh, we come through the beads on this side. And then we pick up 3 11-ohs, and then we pick up a 4mm round and a 15-oh. And again, we're going to go into this 8-oh. Target the middle of the 8-oh up towards the top of the 8-oh and slide through. Arrange it so that it goes down into place properly, because they're not going to just pop in there perfect. You have to arrange them. And then, since we've come through here, placing this petal bead, we now need to go through the opposite petal bead. So we'll go through the 15-oh and the 4mm round. Arrange everything so that they're laid out like this. And now we need to make our last piece of border and then sew up around so that we secure it all together. So we need to pick up our border beads. We'll pick up 3 of them. And we'll go through this 4mm round, and we'll go through this 15-oh. I'm just going to put my thumb and my finger on, draw my thread through, draw it in tight. And then again, I'm going to go through the center of this 8-oh, up towards the top of that bead, pushing everything else out of my way with this thumb here, and pull this through Again, I'm going to kind of squish my beads down so that they are in the place I want them to be. I'll draw my thread towards the bottom of that 8-0 and go through the 15-0 here, which is always kind of a trick, and the 4mm round. That's the hardest part of the whole thing, is going through that last little 15-0. But once you get through there, you're home free. Now we're going to go through these 3 11-0s here. Pull everything tight, make sure everything's laid out pretty like this, and then let's begin putting in 15-0 seed beads between all the border beads here. So we have sets of 3, we go between the sets of 3. Pick up a 15-0 and travel between them. Whoops, I just flipped that whole thing out of there. Oh my. Okay, let's go through these 3. Pick up another 15-0, and we're just going to travel all the way around. This pattern is not difficult. There's just more steps than I generally do when I do a beginner's project, but it's really fully worth it. It turns out so pretty. Just take your time. I'm just putting all my 15-0s between the sets of 3s here. And once you get 3 or 4, 5 units done, then it'll just make sense and you'll just cruise through it. The first few, it takes a little bit. You have to get used to the way the beads want to come together and boggle up and all the weird things they have to do. So, and you have to figure out how to straighten that out. So as I do this, I like to just kind of push everything into order. And with my finger underneath, I kind of push my flower beads up a little bit. I'm not talking tons, just a little bit. And then I'll put in my last 15-0 here. Draw this all down around the bead. You can see now how it starts to dome the flower a little bit and makes a really nice border that is somewhat underneath the flower. And then we're going to sew all the way around again. So just start sewing through all the border beads. If you don't do this, your border will not stay tight and underneath the beads the way it should. So just go ahead and do this again all the way around. And once I get to the bottom here, I will just go through the 3 11-0s on the very bottom and avoid this 15-0 on the other side. And now I am in position to start my next extension. And straighten everything out here. My flower is kind of weird there. I can start my next extension by picking up my 11-0, my 3 11-0s of the main color. So I've got accent, 3 11-0s of the main color, and an accent 11-0, just like that. Then I go back down through these 3 11-0s here. Sew back through all of these beads and then begin my next flower. So we're going to go ahead and go to length off camera. And just, if you need to, just back up the camera and watch a few more units. As you do your next unit, just back up and watch how I did this one, and so on, so that you can keep making them until you figure out exactly how to do it on your own. And continue making these until you have 10 units. So you can see I have made all of my units, and I sewed around and secured this last one, and I'm coming out of the 3 11-0s here so that I can put on my clasping end. However, let's discuss length a little bit here. These 10 units with the clasp that I'm using, of course you can use a smaller clasp or whatever clasping you're using, will change your length. So with mine, if I put my toggle halfway through the first mark here and line it out, This is almost 7 inches. Once I put my extension on and my clasping on, I should have about a 7.5-inch bracelet. Now, if you want a shorter bracelet, of course, you can leave off a unit, or you can even make an extension and then put your clasping on the extension instead of putting another flower on if you need just a tiny bit more length, but you don't need a whole flower. Now, if you need a bigger bracelet, of course, go ahead and make another flower. So that's how will adjust your length. And if you're making it for someone else, generally a 6-inch bracelet is small. You'll want to go 6.5 inches. If you want to make a medium, you go 7.5 inches, or a large is 8.5 inches. Mine is going to be a little over 7, or about 7.5 inches, just so you know. And now we're coming out of this last unit here, these 311 seed beads, and we're going to put on our clasping. So grab your other clasp end, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to pick up 3 of the 11 seed beads in the accent color. So that is my silver color, and then I'm going to pick up an 8, and I'm going to drop these down to my bracelet. I'm going to go through the loop on my clasp and bring it down. Then I'm going to go just through this 8 seed bead here. Get you a little closer, just like this. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to hold on to that 8, and I'm just going to pull this down, guiding my thread through all the beads, just like that. Now I'm going to pick up 3 more of my accent color beads, 311 and I'm going to go through the 311 I'm attaching to on the opposite side, and I'm ignoring the 15 on either side of those beads. And I'm just going to pull this down. Now we're going to sew back through this twice, just like we did on the other side. Once you have sewn through this and secured it, come out these 311 here and we'll be back. Okay, so now I have secured my last unit and I'm coming out of these 311. We're going to sew through and tie a few knots and tie this off so we can cut off our thread. One thing I want to tell you is these beads do not lay absolutely perfect and in line on this. It's not designed to do that. They're supposed to be kind of up and down like a flower would be. So you're going to have a couple that buckle here and there. And don't think that's wrong. That's the way it should be. That's what kind of gives it character and makes it cute. So don't worry about that too much. I mean, you don't want them to be a big old boggled up mess, but they're not going to lay perfect. Your 15 O's are going to be here and there. Some beads are going to be up higher than others, and that's just the way this pattern works. So now I'm coming out of these 311 I'm going to turn my bracelet over, get you real close again, and we're going to go through this 15 here and these 311 I'm going to go underneath the thread bridge between this 15 and these 11 making sure that I'm not going to distort anything. I'm going to pull a gentle loop, just pull it really slowly, go through the loop, and then I'm going to guide my thread to make sure it goes down between those beads, nice and neat, just like that. And then I'm going to sew into this 15 and of course these beads are pulled tightly, so it's going to take a second to get through them. And then I'm going to go through the next 3 11 I'm then going to go through the 15 these 3 11 and this 15 and just tie a knot over here so that it's kind of on either side tied. So I'm going to go through these 3 beads. Okay, I'm coming out of this 15 here now. I'm going to go up underneath these 3 11 trying to make sure I'm not grabbing any of my flower petal threads, and line that up, pull my thread through nice and slowly, make a loop, go through that loop, and gently pull a knot down between those beads, just like that. Hope I was in camera. And then I'm just going to sew up a few more. You can tie as many knots as you want. I just feel like that's probably more than enough. We've got everything pretty well. Okay, so I skipped up and did something stupid. So what I need to do is back out of these 3. Actually, that's just my thread bridge. So I'm just going to go back up through those. Sorry guys, confused myself. And then I'm just going to cut this off, leave a little bit of a tag, and then I'm going to burn this down by just getting my lighter close, making a little blob, letting it roll in. Yeah, that was just a thread bridge from my other units. So I'm good. And this is what this looks like. And imagine doing the whole thing and then screwing up on your tie-off. Oh, that would really suck. And so now let's put this little guy on and see what it looks like. See if I can do this fairly quickly. I'm going to get all my beads out of the way. And this is what this looks like. It's so cute, guys. It's just adorable. And I have some movement, and I think it's just the right length for me. It's pretty good. It looks really nice. And this is what the units look like. Get it close. Here's the clasping. Just adorable. I really like it. I was making this when I made the first couple units. Of course, it took me a little bit to design it to where it flowed halfway decent, but once I made a few units, I just fell in love with it. I like the color scheming I chose, and I also like just the general appearance of it. It's just really cute. So if you want some 4mm rounds, I do have them on my website. I have all of these beads. So if you need any of these beads, then you can check it out. Otherwise, grab stuff out of your stash and try it. Just take your time with it and just work through it slowly and gently, and you should be able to do this just fine. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. See you later. Bye-bye.